Acrylic paint is a fast-drying paint made of pigment suspended in acrylic polymer emulsion. Acrylic paints are water-soluble, but become water-resistant when dry. Depending on how much the paint is diluted with water, or modified with acrylic gels, media, or pastes, the finished acrylic painting can resemble a watercolor or an oil painting, or have its own unique characteristics not attainable with other media. History: as early as 1934, the first usable acrylic resin dispersion was developed by German chemical company BASF, which was patented by Rohm and Haas. The synthetic paint was first used in the 1940s, combining some of the properties of oil and watercolor. Between 1946 and 1949, Leonard Bochweiler and Sam Golden invented a solution acrylic paint under the brand Magner Paint. These were mineral spirit-based paints. Acrylics were made commercially available in the 1950s. Following that development, Golden came up with a waterborne acrylic paint called Acrylic. Otto Rohm invented acrylic resin, which was quickly transformed into acrylic paint. In 1953, the year that Rohm and Haas developed the first acrylic emulsions, José L. Gutiérrez produced Polytech acrylic artists' colors in Mexico, and Henry Levinson of Cincinnati-based Permanent Pigments Company produced Liquitex colors. These two product lines were the very first acrylic emulsion artists' paints. Water-based acrylic paints were subsequently sold as latex house paints, as latex is the technical term for a suspension of polymer microparticles in water. Interior latex house paints tend to be a combination of binder, sometimes acrylic, vinyl, clay, and others, filler, pigment, and water. Exterior latex house paints may also be a copolymer or blend, but the best exterior water-based paints are 100% acrylic, due to elasticity and other factors, but vinyl costs half of what 100% acrylic resins cost, and PVA, polyvinyl acetate, is even cheaper, so paint companies make many different combinations of them to match the market. Soon after the water-based acrylic binders were introduced as house paints, artists and companies alike began to explore the potential of the new binders. Water-soluble artists' acrylic paints were sold commercially by Liquitex beginning in the 1950s, with modern high-viscosity paints becoming available in the early 60s. In 1963, Roni, now part of Daler Roni since 1983, was the first manufacturer to introduce artists' acrylic paints in Europe, under the brand name Acrylic. Painting with acrylics. Before the 19th century, artists mixed their own paints, which allowed them to achieve the desired color and thickness, and to control the use of fillers, if any. While suitable media and raw pigments are available for the individual production of acrylic paint, hand mixing may not be practical because of the fast drying time and other technical issues. Acrylic painters can modify the appearance, hardness, flexibility, texture, and other characteristics of the paint surface by using acrylic media or simply by adding water. Watercolor and oil painters also use various media, but the range of acrylic media is much greater. Acrylics have the ability to bond to many different surfaces, and media can be used to modify their binding characteristics. Acrylics can be used on paper, canvas, and a range of other materials. However, their use on engineered woods such as medium-density fiberboard can be problematic because of the porous nature of those surfaces. In these cases, it is recommended that the surface first be sealed with an appropriate sealer. Acrylics can be applied in thin layers or washes to create effects that resemble watercolors and other water-based media. They can also be used to build thick layers of paint. Gel and molding paste media are sometimes used to create paintings with relief features that are, quite literally, sculptural. Acrylic paints are also used in hobbies such as train, car, house, and human models. People who make such models use acrylic paint to build facial features on dolls, or raise details on other types of models. Wet acrylic paint is easily removed from paint brushes and skin with water, whereas oil paints require the use of a hydrocarbon. Acrylic paints are the most common paints used in grunge, a surrealist technique that became popular with the advent of acrylic paint. Acrylics are used for this purpose because they easily scrape or peel from a surface. Painting techniques. Acrylic artists' paints may be thinned with water and used as washes in the manner of watercolor paints, but unlike watercolor, the washes are not rehydratable once dry. For this reason, acrylics do not lend themselves to the color lifting techniques of gum Arabic-based watercolor paints. Acrylic paints with gloss or matte finishes are common, although a satin, semi-matte sheen is most common. Some brands exhibit a range of finishes, for example heavy body paints from Golden, Liquitex, Winsor & Newton and Daler-Rowney. Polytech acrylics are fully matte. As with oils, pigment amounts and particle size or shape can affect the paint sheen. Matting agents can also be added during manufacture to dull the finish. If desired, the artist can mix different media with their paints and use top coats or varnishes to alter or unify sheen. When dry, acrylic paint is generally non-removable from a solid surface if it adheres to the surface. Water or mild solvents do not resolubilize it, although isopropyl alcohol can lift some fresh paint films off. Toluene and acetone can remove paint films, but they do not lift paint stains very well and are not selective. The use of a solvent to remove paint may result in removal of all of the paint layers, acrylic gesso, etc. Oils and warm, soapy water can remove acrylic paint from skin. Only a proper acrylic gesso should be used to prime canvas in preparation for painting with acrylic paints. However, acrylic paint can be applied to a raw canvas if so desired without any negative effect or chemical reaction, the case with oil paint. It is important to avoid adding non-stable or non-archival elements to the gesso upon application. However, the viscosity of acrylic can be successfully reduced by using suitable extenders that maintain the integrity of the paint film. There are retarders to slow drying and extend workability time, and flow releases to increase color blending ability.